Hey Panda Nation, you are listening to the Inverted Gear podcast with your hosts Nelson and Hillary. Join us every week as we take you behind the scenes into our brand, discuss upcoming projects, and conversate beyond the mat with the interesting people we've met along the way.
Hey Jason, how are you?
Hello, Nelson. How are you? I'm good.
I'm
Thank you.
doing good. Now we need some tech support, figure out these microphones. We had some echo going, but I believe we took care of it.
Yes. Hi, Hillary. ¿Cómo estás?
Hi Jason.
Nice to
Bien,
see you
¿y tú?
guys. Muy bien, gracias.
So Jason, you are one of my oldest friends.
That's an honor, Nelson.
And we have a bond that cannot be broken. You actually cornered me at my very first jiu-jitsu match.
Which I don't remember, by the way.
Well, it meant a lot to me. It didn't mean much to you, but I'll forgive you for that.
It's not your fault. It's my type 3 diabetes.
And at one point we were neighbors, so I would like randomly show up at your house and ask for coffee.
Yes, that was sweet.
You are also a very well-known fitness trainer, and also I think one of the handsomest ones.
Oh, thank you.
We have empirical data. There was like a poll and everything.
No, there was. Oh, yes, for Shape Magazine. This is before I had the beard, Hillary.
I mean, you are still guapissimo, so don't worry about that.
I appreciate the love, Nelson.
So, Jason, tell me a little bit about how you started training in jiu-jitsu.
I think the year was 1993, and I saw Royce Gracie fight in the first UFC on an old VHS tape at my parents' home in the Pocono Mountains. And I was intrigued. Initially, I was very intrigued. I was like, this can't work. What is this? What this guy just ducks his head, covers up, and rushes in and gets this takedown, and then he's able to do all these odd things to these martial artists. So originally very intrigued, but of course the Pocono Mountains, you guys know where I'm from, there's nothing up there, right? So I moved to Philadelphia, and this is when yellow pages were still a thing. Physical
like
yellow
actual physical pages, right?
Yes. And I had the yellow pages that were like 3 inches thick. And I started to look for jiu-jitsu, and Gracie Jiu-Jitsu specifically in the yellow pages. And Maxercise, Steve Maxwell, actually had a nice sized ad in the back of the yellow pages. And a friend of mine, his name was Pete, and another person whose actual name is Jason Brown, but we won't talk about him. We all went down and we started taking classes at Steve Maxwell's, Maxercise at the time at 707 Chestnut. The address is still ingrained in my head. And the first lesson we ever did was they mount you, and this is still the concept that Horion uses and the Gracie Academy uses. They do an introductory lesson when people come in. They mount you and say, what would you do? And everybody's always like, I would do a groin strike. I would gouge you in the eyeballs. I would just freak out, bro. You don't know me type of stuff. So then I think it was just a blue belt, and his name was Jeff. And I was a pretty strong guy at the time. And Jeff mounted me and he said, okay, so in a street scenario, calmly, what would you do? And I went for the groin. Couldn't get the groin, right? I went for the face, I went for the eyes, and nothing worked. So I was like, okay, this seems like a pretty big deal. This seems like a legit type of art. And that's all that was needed. So
yeah, I remember a similar thing when the Lions system for like instructors, I believe the verbiage was I can touch your nose. Or like if I have you mounted, I can touch your nose.
You can't.
If I don't want to, you're not gonna touch my nose. So I think that saves a lot of unnecessary groin strikes to instructors.
Yes, it's true. That's the one argument people always use against jiu-jitsu. Well, I'll just eye gouge, but then we also had the eye gouges, right?
I mean, remember there was like a kung fu guy that was like was just making like tons of videos on YouTube about his system to like defeat jiu-jitsu.
The shaved head guy?
I believe
Yes.
so. It was like, like anybody that had like any kind of jiu-jitsu knowledge, it was like comical.
Yeah.
But like he's like devoted. All these like kung fu guys were like, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So you
What are you gonna
started
do?
training jiu-jitsu in '93, and then I
No,
think
no,
in your
no. I didn't
stories.
start training. I saw the UFC first
Okay,
in '93, but
and
then
then
it
you
took
moved to
me a few.
Philly.
Yeah, and then it took me a few years. I think '97 was my first class, or '96 was
Okay,
my first class, something like that.
all right, '97. But it took you how many years to get your black belt?
Uh, Wait, it's 2020. So what is that?
23 years.
Do the math, Hillary. Do the math. What can Nelson? I'm a Ronin, though. This is the thing. But I got it
Well,
from Steve, my original teacher, which I'm happy to say. Full
you
circle,
full
jujitsu, Nelson. Full circle jujitsu. It took me
full
20.
circle. But I think like those stories to me are more fascinating than the guys that got their black belt in 5 years. It's like, okay, I get it. You didn't do anything else. You didn't move anywhere. You
Right,
probably didn't have a job or a girlfriend at the time. I get it.
right.
And
And
like I've seen that happen before.
there were some years where I took a whole year off.
Yeah, like I remember that, especially when like the kids were young and like you were busy, you were like teaching all these certs and like you were traveling a lot. So it's awesome that you always found your way back to it and you stayed true to like, the jujitsu you wanted to learn. I remember like trying to show you some like the more modern stuff. You're like, nah, it's like I'm not into that.
I know. I need to
And
start exploring that stuff more often. Just last night we did a really slow. I taught the class, and was an arm lock from cross-side, and it was the slowest, most steadiest arm lock ever because that's the type of jujitsu that I appreciate. I can't do this flashy stuff like flying arm bars and stuff like that, but it's just nice, slow, and steady. And it's
I I remember somebody describing like that style of jiu-jitsu as a glacier.
glacier. Yes,
It's just like, it doesn't seem like it's moving very fast, but like good luck trying to stop it.
that's a good analogy. I like that. I like that visual. Yeah.
Solid
Sounds
foundation.
about right, Jason.
I'm a glacier.
Jason is a glacier. But I think especially the older I get and the more limited my training time becomes, I appreciate more and more like a minimalist approach to jiu-jitsu. And I remember you were the first person that brought Henry Aiken to my attention. And his concept of what was it? It works if anything worth putting the reps in needs to work in MMA, work no gi, work in the gi. Is that fair?
That's fair. It's totally fair. Yeah. Chris
Right.
Harder has that same type of concept as well. Well, you've taught with Chris Harder, right?
Yeah, he's like what's it called? Practice sport, think street, and
Train art,
train art. Yeah.
which is so sweet, right?
Chris is a fascinating human. I remember one time I was like, I was obsessed with mountscapes for like a year because I went to a training camp and there was like these two big black belts and I was rolling with them and it was like back and forth. Like, I could sweep them, they could sweep me, I could pass a guard, they could pass my guard. But we got to a point where like I mounted them, they got out of my mount and they mounted me and I could not skip mount on either of them. So I was like, oh shit, like, it was pretty even until this, like, that's a hole in my game.
Yes.
And like, this is something I need to work on. And I was trying to pick like Chris Harder's brain about this. And I go to show him the mountscape I was working on. And it's the one where like you force him into technical mount and then you turn and you could do like double unders and like you scoop the leg with both of your arms underneath. And then Chris just goes, it's like, yeah, but why did they do this? And he slaps the shit out of me. It's like, that wouldn't work on the street, Nelson.
Right.
And it is one of like my favorite Chris Harder memories.
He'll bring it up too when you see him.
Yeah.
He remembers it?
It's like, yeah.
That's
one time we got to smack Nelson.
That's great. In his garage?
We were in
camp.
We were in camp. It was like in New Hampshire, I believe, or
it was either New Hampshire or Maine. Sometimes they're very similar.
The Globe Trotter camp.
Yeah, the Globe Trotters. Yeah, because the first time they came, that was in New Hampshire, and then I believe they relocated to Maine like a year or two later.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, it was either 1 or 2 years later. They're in Maine now all the time.
Yeah.
Beautiful little.
Yeah, it's a beautiful like campground on a lake.
Yeah, the photos. I've only seen the photos, and it's beautiful.
They set it up. Like if you remember ever going to camp as a kid, like they'll set you up in the cabins, and they have like the mess hall and the big gym, and
no
it's a
more
cool
buffets
experience
though,
being in
right?
the woods.
Post
I have no idea.
Right.
I have no idea what they're doing, but yeah, like that one was like buffet style, and Christian even like had a lobster night. It was like that place is pretty fancy. They do weddings and stuff, so they have like a really nice kitchen. Probably some of the best food we've had at camp.
Yes.
And like they did like a lobster night. Like Christian ordered like ridiculous amount of lobsters, like over one per person.
Well, yeah, we had to. We're in Maine.
Right.
And like, there's all these people that have never eaten lobster before, and you're sitting like in picnic tables, and like, all the vegans just like fled the scene because it was just carnage.
Because they were throwing them in the hot water.
Oh my god.
No, it's just like when they were served, like, people just breaking down lobster and like picnic tables, because like people are just breaking them apart, like juice flying all over the place.
That smell of carnage.
The smell of carnage, yeah. So like the vegans fled the scene, but everybody else was like, "Oh my god, this is a good time." So, Jason.
Yes.
Steve Maxwell, you were training jiu-jitsu for a long time there, and then how did you get involved with the kettlebells? Did you like see Steve had them in the corner somewhere in the gym?
Yes. They're in my garage, otherwise I would run and get them. But Steve had one of his students. His first name was Rusty. I think his last name was Wright or White, Rusty White. He was a machine shop guy, right?
And Great name for a machine shop guy.
I know, right? And he was one of these manly men, right? Like forearms that were like this, right? But he had a steel ball bearing. It's the most beautiful thing. I can send you a photo if you want to put it in a post or something. But it's a steel ball bearing with this square handle welded onto it. And he has two of them. And one is like 53 pounds and the other one is like 55. So the weight selection is a little bit off, but who cares? And I remember walking up the stairs in exercise and thinking like, what the hell is that? And that was the first, because kettlebells were not commercially available yet in the US. So Steve had Rusty make these little prototypes, and Steve used them, and they're actually featured in Pavel's first kettlebell book as well.
Yeah, Enter the Kettlebell, right? I remember that. It's a picture.
Russian Kettlebell Challenge was the first one.
Okay, Russian Kettlebell Challenge, and then it's a picture of Steve and Zach, if I'm correct, like holding the kettlebell, right?
Correct. Yes. And they're doing bridges with the kettlebells, and Zach is deadlifting the kettlebells and stuff. But Steve would put athletic tape on the handles, which was not the best thing for your calluses.
Yeah, like you don't want it to be that catchy,
right? Yeah. So, but yeah, that was my first introduction, and then I'm sort of like an amateur historian when it comes to physical culture and stuff like that. So actually in Philadelphia, right on Germantown Avenue, not far from where you guys lived, was a huge gym that had rooms full of kettlebells. And you can actually go visit this spot. If you get into real old school physical culture, you can visit this location in Germantown Avenue that had rooms full of kettlebells.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I know.
I mean, like now when I got into like the heavy clubs last year, and I started like looking at the history of them.
Yes.
And there was like a period of time where like they were like, it was such common thing for like, if anybody was into fitness, that was part of it. There's pictures of like the cadets at West Points going like through daily Indian club workouts.
Yep.
And then York Barbell started like making dumbbells and barbells, and like that changed everything.
I know. It's such a shame. Such a beautiful system.
And I mean, if you look at a lot of the old school like lifting manuals, like the first dumbbell exercises is a lot of swinging that are emulating like club swings,
Yeah.
Very, very circular.
Yes. Yeah. I picked them up from another presenter at a fitness conference once, but he gave me these. You've probably seen them when we shared the gym together. Those little wooden dumbbells, they're no more than 4 pounds, right? But the circular motions, they're all the same. Even the wooden Indian clubs, they're high repetition. Now in America, we like to do heavy club swings and heavy and stuff like that. But those little dumbbells, that was the original thing, sort of like a loaded weight. A loaded mobility exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah. The cool thing I like about the clubs and the kettlebells is that they were always well integrated with the other combat arts, right? So if you look up old school physical culture, you're going to see boxing, you're going to see grappling, whether it be some type of, Greco-Roman or folk style type of stuff, but you're going to also see the physical preparation component of that as well. So that term physical culture is pretty sweet because you get both. You get the cross-pollination of the physical preparation using those old school tools like the kettlebell and the clubs, but then you get the grappling, you get the boxing, you get the gymnastics, the natural gymnastics type of stuff.
Yeah, especially if you start looking like guys like Sandow and like all these like old school strongmen. A lot of them were also taking like, they would do like this like strength feats.
Yeah.
But then they would also like just wrestle people right after.
Right. Yeah. Right. And do these odd lifts, which I think were directly applicable to their grappling arts, like the bent press. The bent press is basically a hip throw with a very heavy kettlebell, right?
Yeah. Or I was actually talking to Hillary about this, like two hand anyhow.
Yep.
And they would do like the Turkish get up and then like curl the kettlebell up and like then have both things pressed overhead.
Yep.
And you don't see anyone doing that anymore. But like, the fact that, they were strong enough and like stable enough.
Yeah.
To do these things is that you can see how that would carry over into combat sports.
Totally. And they were so strong at such a light weight. None of these guys were huge bodybuilders, right? They were all lean, but well muscled, but not overly muscled, right?
The only one I can think of is like the big Indian wrestler, Gama.
Gama was pretty big. Yeah.
Gama was like the only big guy, but also he did train with like a mace that's bigger than my arm.
Right. There was one or two Eastern Europeans which were pretty big also, but they were, let's say, not as lean, right?
Yeah.
They have the big power bellies like me.
Extra leverage, Jason.
Extra leverage, yes.
Superior leverage.
Extra glacier.
Extra glacier.
Yes.
Yeah. Man, fun stuff. How do you see, how you feel about how popular and like how commonplace kettlebells are now versus like, you were introduced to them before they were even commercially available.
Right.
Now it has to be weird to go to Walmart and being able to buy kettlebells there.
Right. You know what? I was thinking about this the other day when I was watching a jiu-jitsu documentary. It was actually Chris. It was Chris Hodder. Actually, he said, he was training jiu-jitsu before the first UFC, right? With the guys in California. But he said, the first UFC sort of broke my heart because now the cat was out of the bag. Now everyone was going to want to do jiu-jitsu, right? And that kettlebell story is the same thing. You have these cool little circles of very devoted kettlebell individuals, and then the cat left the bag, and now you have them available in Walmart. And I mean, I'm happy that people are moving and doing things like that, but it also gets watered down and
I believe, especially over the last year, the amount of kettlebell videos, especially like Instagram influencers, like fitness accounts, putting like really bad technique kettlebell videos, and like the amount of guys who's posting kettlebell arm workouts just breaks my heart.
Right. I saw a kettlebell, well-known kettlebell guy the other day say, people are now on Instagram calling themselves kettlebell experts after 6 months of training.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? It's really easy to, if you look good, right? If you're lean and you have nice quads and you have a handsome face, you can call yourself whatever you want and people will actually buy into it, right? So,
yeah. Also, the other thing now, it seems to be like for a long time, kettlebells, like the draw of kettlebells is how simple they were.
Yes.
It's like you're gonna clean, press, squat, swing, snatch, Turkish get up, and that was it. And you go ahead, like you program that. You don't have to do every lift every day. You just keep it simple. Throw some pull-ups in there if you feel inclined to do so, and that is a good training program. And you can get really strong doing this, and it's going to carry over to combat sports. That was like the draw, at least for me.
Yes.
And now we're gone away from that, and it's all these very complicated kettlebell flows.
Yes.
Being sold to the masses and like making something so simple complicated.
It's true. It's true. And I may be a little bit guilty of helping that originally, maybe a few years ago. But but you know what? It is poetic. It is artistic. But I agree. If you only have a certain amount of time to train, which most people seem to only have a certain amount of time to train, even in these weird times, I would pick a handful of skills and really refine and perfect those skills and use that as the majority of my conditioning. Specifically, if we're talking about including other activities like jiu-jitsu and everything like that, let's think about the skill set that we have to play with in our martial art. Do I also want to play with 20 other skill sets? Or do I just want to get into the best shape get into really good shape using the basics and allow jiu-jitsu to fill in the holes with all the other, details of the conditioning game?
Yeah. And what I found funny too now is there's a lot more interest in doing like rotational training with kettlebells.
Yes.
Like the inside cleans and outside cleans, and you're pretty much converting club exercises into kettlebells.
Yes.
And then even something I haven't like now is somewhat popular is like when people press and then rotate at the top.
Mm-hmm.
So like even adding rotations to the presses, it's fascinating. I mean, like anything, like even jiu-jitsu is much different than it was when you started.
90s. Yeah.
Kettlebell training as well has changed.
Yeah.
So I think that is both of them are just a breathing art, we could say.
Yes. See, that's one thing, Nelson. I think trainers do this, and we do it to ourselves. We have so many tools available to us, right? But kettlebells are a wonderful tool, but I think they work best in a straight, we'll just say sagittal plane, flexion and extension. Now people, like you said, are including them so much in the rotational aspects. And I have seen so many knees collide with kettlebells because people are doing all these big circles with the kettlebells from overhead that they don't necessarily have the control with, when there are better tools for rotational work. A simple tool would be like medicine balls or a cable or even club work, right? We don't need to use the same tool for absolutely every application.
Yeah. What are your thoughts, Hillary? I believe Jason taught you your first kettlebell exercises. Is that?
Yeah,
do I remember that correctly?
I still have nightmares about just doing squats with kettlebells. And now my legs gave out on me after driving home and trying to get out of the car.
Yeah, Jason put a conditioning circuit for us when we were like training for, I think, the no-gi pants. This must have been like 2014, 2013.
14, I think, actually.
Yeah, and I remember like after we were done and like on the floor, like Jason's like, "Man, you guys are kind of deconditioned. I thought you'd be in better shape."
Well, here's the funny thing. It was a lot of like the mobility of it, even just doing a squat, but like over and over again and doing it correctly and making like you have to do it correctly with the kettlebell. Like just about any of the movements, you do it wrong.
That was my fault, Hillary. I'm sorry I let you down.
No, you did not. I was fine. The second, third day soreness was a bitch, but I got through it.
Didn't you actually fall into the curb when you got out of the car? You fell like...
No, like, I mean, yeah. Okay, so we park on the street. You get out of the car, and we had like the little grassy area, and I just like my legs, like they fell asleep. I never had a workout like that before. Like, I mean, I've done squats since I was in high school, but that was a new one. Just, I guess, like I said, we did the circuit over and over and over again. Yeah. But again, it was training. It was a different kind of training that my body just wasn't used to. And but coming back to your question, Nelson, what I'm thinking about the kettlebells and how it's evolving, just like jujitsu or any other sport, is like you still need those basic movements that you talked about, like being able to do like the clean press or Turkish get up even before expanding into these other artistic movements. I mean, it's nice to have that creative, be able to expand creatively with it. But yeah, then when is it dangerous and when are you using the wrong tool?
Right. Yes.
So, but the versatility of the kettlebell, I think, has been a big help, especially getting through not being able to go to like other gyms and use the equipment like you're used to, like having your own weight that you can move around with you, whether you're at home or you're going somewhere or any room in the house.
Yeah,
Having it at your gym, it doesn't take up much space if you want to have it at your facility. So
it's definitely a beautiful tool for all of those reasons that you just said, Hillary, right? There could be 3 of them right next to you and you wouldn't even know it right now, right? And you could
right.
pick one up in between each conversation and do 5
Right.
snatches, right?
Yeah. So yeah, it's very, very convenient. But yeah, when are you going too far and like you keep hitting your knee or hitting yourself in the head, or you're not doing like right breathing or correct posture? It's like,
Yes.
what are your basics?
I think one of the things, especially that it seems, I always see, I don't know why, like new people is gravitate, especially grapplers, just gravitate towards the snatch and like high volume snatches because they just love like the long burn that you get from like, like that high volume snatch work.
Yes.
And then they're not necessarily ready for that. Like, their shoulder mobility is not where it needs to be. Their technique is not where it needs to be. So the bell is just flopping over and hitting their wrist and they're like super unstable at the top.
That's the kettlebell community's fault because they try to sell the snatch as like the be all end all of exercises, but it's not, for the exact reasons that you just said, Nelson, right? Jiu-jitsu's shoulders tend to be one of the most beat up joints, right? Elbows are cranky on a lot of jiu-jitsu players, and then we give them high volume snatches. Kettlebells by themselves, even if your technique is pristine and sweet, it can still be a little bit troublesome for the elbows, right? Because there is a lot of pull on the bicep tendons and the inner elbow. So I agree with you. I think we put these labels on certain exercises, like the czar of kettlebell lifts, right? Like, well, I can actually get a lot of the swing out of the swing and not beat up my elbows and my shoulders as much. So rule number 1, and you guys know this, right? Rule number 1, do no harm. Rule number 2, performance enhancement. And then what is rule number 3, Nelson and Hillary? These are the 3 things. Rule number 1 is do no harm or reduce injury, prevent injury. Number 2 is performance enhancement because you can't enhance performance if you're injured, right? Number 3 is quality of life after the activity, right?
Yeah.
I knew that.
You knew that. I knew you knew that, Hillary.
That is something
rusty.
that when you're in your 20s and you really don't have real life responsibilities, I remember enjoying, because now, like every time I'm doing stuff, I gotta think, it's like, okay, like, Leo's gonna wake up soon and dad is gonna have to chase him around and throw him all over the place. So
right.
Are my legs gonna be good to chase this like 3-year-old full of energy around the backyard?
Right. What's he
Or
like?
it's gonna be like, no, Leo, dad had high volume squats today.
Yes.
You can't play.
He's almost 40 pounds now.
Wow. You should be throwing
wiggly little kettlebell.
Throwing him overhead, right?
Yeah, he's almost 1 pood.
1 pood, yes. He's more than 1 pood. Wait,
What?
That's right, 1.5.
Yeah, 36.
Pood?
Yeah, 36 that's like the original kettlebell sizes were 1 pood, 36.
Oh.
36 pounds.
1.5 pood, 24 kilo, and then the 72 is the 2 pood.
Yes.
Different than stones.
Yeah, different than stone.
Yeah, I don't know how it relates to stones. It's 16.1 kilos or something like that, so it's not quite.
Huh.
Yeah.
And I think it's pronounced pud, to be honest. Although it's 2 O's, I think most Russians would say pud. Pud. I don't know. Who knows? Languages are hard, especially Eastern European languages.
Yeah, I mean,
We'll have to
It's
Ask
their
an
own
expert.
branch of craziness over there. Like, we going into that rabbit hole. I was like, ooh. We had a friend on the podcast. His name is Ruan, and he's done a lot of traveling to Eastern Europe, and like I like keeping up with his travels, and it's fascinating. He speaks a little bit of German.
He's American. He's an American.
He's Irish.
Irish. Ruhan.
Yeah, and he did this trip, and he went to like a Kazakhstan, and like he's trying to communicate out there.
You
It's
told me about
fascinating.
this the other day. I think you were telling me about him going to
Yeah.
Kazakhstan.
So it's fascinating, and just languages in general, like fascinate me. But you are one of the persons. You and Zach. You still this to me. Zach Avanesh was like at the end of the day, strength is a skill. It's like learning a language. You like it. You need to practice like you practice any other skill. And also, if like if you don't speak a language for a while, you're gonna forget that language. Same like with your strength training. So a lot of times, this kettlebell lifts is a lot of, especially I remember being very impatient when I was younger. I really wanted to press the 40 kilo kettlebell, and I was like 190 pounds back then. So like it's pretty close to half my body weight. I just wanted to be able to press it, and I remember like obsessing about it, and then like I got older and I forgot about it, and then I just
you
got
never
back
got
into
it.
kettlebell training.
You never got it.
I think I got it with my right hand, but I could never get it with my left hand.
Yeah.
And then like I got older, I forgot about it. I lost access to a 40 kilo kettlebell until recently when our kettlebell shipment came in.
Right.
And then like I have been training in my basement, just what I had available, and doing a lot of Turkish get-ups, doing like kneeling clean and presses, because when I got back into kettlebell training in the basement, I was like very afraid of pressing between the rafters of my basement. I can't quite clear the ceiling, so I have to like press in between the floor joists on my house. So I was like very freaked out about that for a long time. Now I even doing Turkish get-ups standing all the way up now. I feel like I just gotta aim and like go right in between the floor joists. But
well, you're supposed to look up, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway, so you can see where you're going.
It's a target. It's a nice target. Yes. So when the kettlebell shipment came in, we got kettlebells for pictures, brought them to the warehouse. We were taking the pictures, and I was like moving the kettlebells and playing around with them for videos and stuff. And I just picked up the 40 kilo kettlebell, and I was able to like clean it, press it with my right. I put it down. I was like, went up with the left. I was like, oh.
And the warehouse has a lot more space, higher ceiling.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like
nobody was there watching.
Yeah, 12 years in the making, but I got to something I always wanted to do.
So out of nowhere, you were able to press this 40.
Well, I've been training with kettlebells, just much lighter kettlebells, but not necessarily going heavy all the time.
I think, Nelson, you know what that's called? Dad strength.
Dad strength, yeah.
Dad strength.
That too.
That's it. That's it.
Also,
something happens when you become a dad, man, and you'll always possess that. Now my boys are getting bigger and stronger, right? Now they're lifting and they're playing lacrosse and baseball and stuff like that, and they're actually working out with teams and stuff. But I'll always have that upper edge because I'll always have the dad strength, right? The grip will never be as strong as mine because I don't know. It's this weird biological factor.
Also, you've been just gripping things for how many years now?
It's true. Hillary, moms have it as well. So
I think so. I was thinking the same thing.
I could see.
The moms I've met along
eyes.
the way before I became a mom, and now feeling it, especially now carrying this giant pumpkin in my belly and having to pick up my growing boy every day, multiple times a day, chasing him around. There is something to it.
There is.
Like I said, I felt it from other moms on the mat, but now, like seeing that and how I can like do a pull-up now, all these fun things I struggled with in the past, just like the daily routine.
Yeah, Hillary's been really putting in the work into her mobility training and getting chronic shoulder injuries from jiu-jitsu and just being like this defensive rounded forward position, used for self-defense, being the smallest person in the mat. So like being able to like open up her shoulders, and she's been doing a ton of Turkish get-ups and club work. Until recently, she hasn't been lifting as much.
But I'll still go hang from the bar and do like shoulder rotations as much as I can. Not exactly every day, but a few times a week at least.
But I would say like
there was a time when I was like it hurt just like to grip anything above my head, whether I was hanging or pressing. It would just hurt. I don't know. But yeah, working on opening this area up.
Your movement quality is just the best since I met you 10 years ago, I would say, no?
Well, gee, thanks. Yeah, I really try to put some time in from my first pregnancy, I think, onward. So I would be able to move with my sons better now.
Right.
It wasn't just about jiu-jitsu anymore. It was about the daily routine.
Yes, the priorities change, don't they? Nelson, that's one reason why I don't do that modern jiu-jitsu game as well. It's like I'm 40, I'm almost 50, right? I can invert. Technically, I can because my spine is good and my neck is good and everything. But do I want to play that game? Do I want to get smashed so tomorrow that I can't, grapple the kids or throw baseball with them and stuff like that? So Chris Hoyter's thing is what? Stay on top, right?
Stay on top. Be on top.
Be on top. If you have to be in guard.
And then
have a guard,
if you have to be on bottom, have an impassable guard.
Right.
And get back on top.
Yeah. So it's cool that we can still train jiu-jitsu, but shift the priorities a little bit.
Yeah, and that's something I think about a lot about now. I haven't trained in over a year. It'll probably be the summer before I get back to training. And how much training am I going to get, and how am I going to spend my training? It's like, do I want to do, because I really enjoy nogi, I enjoy the gi. So do I want to just go a month where I just go no-gi and work on like certain aspects of my game in the no-gi game, and then periodize the gi back in and just work in my gi game for a little bit?
You got to rock those nice canvas gis, Nelson.
Yeah, those Jason is a big fan of the canvas gis. I gotta send you the old school gis that came in. I think you're really gonna like it.
Is that black canvas? Is that black with brown contrast stitching?
Yes.
That's cute. That's nice.
You're gonna look good. You're gonna look good.
Do you have those in A2? Do you have those in A2 Husky? I don't think.
I think you're
you're not a husky.
You have
I prefer
really long arms. There's nothing husky about you.
I prefer the A2 Husky cut though over the A3. I'm technically an A3, but the Huskies just feel better.
Okay.
It's that glacier effect, Nelson. Hillary.
The glacier effect.
Yes.
It's like that Russian doll. You can't knock him over. It's going back.
Those are very sweet gis, though. Those are very nice. They're a favorite at where I train as well.
Yeah, those guys put some orders in.
Yeah.
After you start wearing that sample around, that was funny.
They're very sweet. And the cool thing about where I train, we're all a bunch of old Maxwell students, right? So the first gis that we used were those unbleached Pro Force judo gis that had the sleeves up to here, not IBJJF approved, right? But nobody cared. And then you got that unbleached belt with it. Some guy came to class the other day with a white gi, but the unbleached belt. It was the weirdest combination I've ever seen. But they're old school jiu-jitsu guys, and I think the old school canvas that you guys are producing resonates with that class of individuals.
Yeah, when I was training a lot at Zombie, the instructor Jeremy is really into like more modern jiu-jitsu a lot. He shows a lot of the Mendes style, like berimbolo, upside down, crab ride stuff. And me and Matt, you met Matt Curley, we're like, man, we should run a class, like even if it's one day a week, and you just call it like 1996 jiu-jitsu.
Right.
And you just work on our close guard and half guard in here.
Right.
And it's just maybe it's it now. I'm an old man, and I can do all those things. And like you said, especially if I'm training a lot. When I was training every day, my ribs and my back started having issues just from being upside down all the time.
Yeah.
And we don't know what that looks like yet. Like, the modern game and like all these inversions and like inverted crab rides and bolos. We haven't seen what somebody that's done that for 20 years looks like yet.
That's that quality of life after the activity. So for just to use the NFL as an example, the lifespan of retired NFL athletes is very short because they have beaten themselves up so badly during their activities that I don't know the exact year, but it's like under a decade. They retire and they have less than a decade left just because I'm not saying they all use them, but I'm sure a lot use them. Enhancement things, right? And imagine 250-pound individuals just colliding head on for year after year after year, right?
Yeah, I mean, what is the quote is football is not a contact sport, it's a collision sport.
Yeah.
Oof.
So
And that is one of the what also I remember having friends I played high school with that had a ton of concussions in high school.
right. Yeah.
And now, like, we're gonna have two boys. And it's something I think about is like, what am I gonna do if they tell me, hey, dad, I want to play football?
Yeah. We didn't let our boys play football. They play
And
lacrosse, but it's a little more gentle than American football.
yeah, I mean, it is something to think about, and something that we talk about a lot is we really want to encourage them to like wrestle and do judo when they're young.
Yes.
And there is something we I mean, I think you're one of the persons that told me is like, hey, if you have kids, use gymnastics when they're little. And I remember your boys did it.
Yeah.
And you do gymnastics when they're little, and then they can what's it called, cross into any other sport, and like they're like leagues ahead of their cohorts because their kinesthetic awareness and their relative strength to their body size is just phenomenal.
Yeah. So just to use my oldest son, Angelo, as an example, and one of his best friends, gymnastics friends, his name is Brandon, one of his good friends. They both stopped doing gymnastics, but Brandon, because he has the skill set of flipping, has just won the state championships in diving from the diving board. And he never did it ever in his life. He got on the diving board and was like, I'm going to do this triple tuck forward thing, right? And then he won the states, but because he spent that those foundational years learning rolling and flipping on the gymnastics mat, Angelo can still do backflips and handsprings and cartwheels and stuff like that. Another art that I think every parent should and us being Latinos specifically, well, I'm not Latino, but married to a Latina, a Brazilian specifically, capoeira is look at Hillary's smile. She's like, yes, being married to a Latino. Yes, I know, Hillary. But being married to a Brazilian, she wanted the boys to do capoeira when they were young, and which they did, right? And I think that is wonderful for that kinesthetic awareness. So
Yeah,
I think go ahead.
I've been teaching my nephews a little bit of like little like capoeira flips and like those like hand wheels starting from like that half crab position.
Yep.
And then you just get them to like flip their legs over.
Macacos. Those are called macacos, monkeys.
Macacos, yeah.
Yeah.
So I've been teaching them macacos and like that kind of stuff. And
Angela can still do those too.
I mean, like, it's a nice like low entry flip,
right?
If you want to say, but like, just getting the skill of just being aware, being able to get your hips over your head and land on your feet.
Right.
And I think that is something that so many people, especially I remember doing those in jiu-jitsu warm-ups all the time, and so many people, the moment their hips are above their head, lose all body awareness.
Right.
It's ugly.
That's one thing I think the jiu-jitsu world is actually lacking. So my youngest son, Logan, he did MMA for a few years, which was basically kickboxing, right? And he lost interest. With COVID, you're not allowed to touch one another anymore. So basically, it was just shadow boxing an hour and he lost interest, right? So we checked out an Aikido school. The Jiu-Jitsu club where I train is also, they're Aikido black belts as well. And he saw the ukemi, the rolls. These kids, I think there was a 6-year-old, he had the sweetest rolls from any direction. You couldn't hear him hit the mat. You couldn't hear him. There was no impact. And all these little kids in the Aikido class just had these rolls mastered from every direction, backwards falls, forward falls. And I think that's one area where, as a physical educator in the jiu-jitsu world, I think we really do a disservice to our students when we don't teach them how to fall properly. I don't know if you ever met the guy, Claudio. Did you ever meet Claudio? He did some work at the old gym when we were sharing the gym.
Yeah.
He was a blue belt, right? And
Okay.
I won't mention the school that he trained at, right? But the school talked him into doing a competition at blue belt. But the school never taught him how to get the fight to the ground or what to do if the other person is going to take you to the ground. So he had no falling skills, none, zero. And he just went into this competition and fought somebody that did have takedown skills, and he just smashed the poor guy. And he didn't even know how to break fall. He had no rolls. He had no forward falls. And I think we as physical educators, I think we should take a step back in the jiu-jitsu world. I know everybody is pressed for time, but we could really spend some time on the rolls and the falls. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a friend in Chile. His name is Marquez, and he runs the Chillán Kettlebell gym.
Chilean?
Chillán. So he has this little kettlebell club down there, and it's a beautiful school. They have mats. They do run a jiu-jitsu program out of there. They run like all these movement programs out of it. And one of the things he does for the community is he teaches break falling to old timers.
Right.
And it is
Beautiful.
one of the most beautiful things I ever seen. These guys have martial arts are not very popular in Chile. So you have this 60, 70, 80-year-old very country, like the community is like a lot of farmers and stuff down there. So you have like these guys that have been working on with their hands the whole life, never really developed these movement skills. And they're doing these beautiful break falls on they're on mat and they have a crash pad and he breaks it down and they work on their break falls. And if you look like quality of life at that age, if you take a bad fall and you break your hip,
you're done.
It's really, It is crazy.
Yeah, you're done.
How bad it can be for a person that age to break their hip,
True.
So the increase in quality of life from just being able to break fall at that age is amazing.
It's true. That's one reason why I think I actually think judo and wrestling is a better base for most individuals, because judo schools do emphasize the fall, right?
Well, yeah, that's the whole warm-up, is learning how to fall every which way.
Right.
I mean,
before you even get to your feet and start like randori.
I remember when I started training judo, when the first time I was exposed to judo, I was still in Chile, and I remember almost starting to lose interest. This was right before we moved. So one of the reasons I stopped training judo in Chile was I was like, we're moving. But the entire time I was there, it was just they wouldn't let me. I would get to drill, but I couldn't do randori because my break falling wasn't good enough. And I was 14 at the time, and the instructor was like, nope. You can't do randori yet because your falls are not where it needs to be. And that is so as an older person now, and years of martial arts training under my belt,
you appreciate that.
I get it.
Yes,
I appreciate it.
Yes.
And thinking back is, like you said, is being able to have a takedown base on both, being able to grapple on your feet and grip fight and hand fight, grip fight or hand fight, gi or no gi. Being able to do both, it's like speaking a second language. You get to do the groundwork, but then you also being able to hang like a nice training session. One guy's a high level wrestler. It's all right, let me see if my setups work on this guy.
Yeah.
And saying when I would travel and we I remember we were in Norway, and then one of the guys in Jiu-Jitsu club, he was an old timer, but he was on the Norwegian national judo team. and I got to grip fight with him, and I got to I was trying to work I have this 1-2 foot sweeps. I hit on every jiu-jitsu guy. No. Denied. He's not working on this old timer. He's just like an oak. Or he's remembering when I used to go to my judo club when I started in New Jersey. The instructor was 72, and I could not move the guy.
Right.
And he would either Ushimata or foot sweep me whenever he wanted. And it that is one of my favorite martial arts memories. And I hope that stay active. And we talked about all the things you need, you just think about longevity on my training and follow the rules that you lay down. That when my kids are 18 or 19, 20 and the full piss and vinegar and they want to take down dad's still going to be able to foot sweep him with Uchimata as much as he wants them to.
This is true. This is true.
They will know how to fall so they can get back up again.
Yes.
But yeah, that was something I actually remembered, especially earlier in learning jiu-jitsu, was learning how to fall, but also how to be able to get back up again, and the self-defense aspect of being able to get away. I remember that was a class with Shanji, who 3 times my size guy, right? Shanji Ribeiro. He would show you how to recover your guard, but then escape so you can run away if you don't want to stand there and defend yourself. You can defend yourself enough, but be able to get away.
Yes.
And so competition wise, it was a lot like the wrestling, being able to, okay, you hit the mat, you get back up again. Cause you don't like where it's going on the mat, get up again and take them down.
Right.
I remember winning a lot of my earlier matches, being able just to wrestle down, get back up again. Cause maybe my ground game wasn't quite what it needed to be yet for my opponent.
And circling back to physical culture, I think that is one aspect of fitness that is overlooked by a lot of training systems is getting up.
Yeah.
So we have the Turkish get up, but I remember you having us do a lot of sit-throughs and arches and sit-through style movements as part of conditioning.
Yep. I actually start every kettlebell class with we say standing up in base.
Yeah.
That's what we do. Those hip mechanics that are associated with standing up in base are the hip mechanics that we need for so many other activities.
Yeah.
But and the crazy thing is, and you guys as young parents will see this. I'm sure Leo does it all the time, instinctively. Doesn't need to be. Right. So that's actually the root of the word educate, means to bring out from within. All of these skills, grappling is very primate. We're grapplers. Primates are grapplers, right? And we know this. I'm sure you see this with Leo all the time. But then something happens to us where we just we lose it. So we need to get it back out of us, right? And the standing up in base, I remember watching my youngest, Logan, just he stood up in base like the best jiu-jitsu player ever. And nobody had to show him how to do that, right? The balance and the stability and the what's the word? What's the word? He did it without any extra energy needed.
It was instinct.
Yeah.
It's just natural.
Instinct, but there was no
efficiency.
Yeah, it was just
there was no wasted effort.
Perfect. Yes, there was no wasted effort. Yeah. Right?
I believe that, like we said, break falling is important, especially as you get older. But also there's studies where what was the metric is being able to get back to your feet. And I think the study was specific about the mortality rate between these old timers that were in the study, if they were able to get up without using their hands from sitting on the floor.
So it was, if you the people that used no hands to get up lived longer than the people that used one hand to get up. The people that used one hand to get up lived longer than the people that used two hands to get up. Crazy, right? They actually started cross-legged though, Indian style.
Yeah, they were in a cross-legged. Yeah.
It was actually done in Brazil.
It was. I was gonna say, I believe it was a Brazilian study.
Yeah,
and that is something I think about a lot. And no longevity is hey, I want to train jiu-jitsu as much as possible. I want to be able to swing clubs and kettlebells as long as possible. But I want to play with my kids, but I want to be able to do the same things with my grandchildren.
Right. Yeah.
And like when you're younger, like you don't really care about this stuff. And like, I was like, oh man, like I remember I got really into like powerlifting. I was like, oh, like, I want to squat 500 pounds.
Right.
And I would do these heavy squat workouts, and then like I wouldn't be able to move. Like because like, my central nervous system is so fried.
Yeah.
And like, I was just like heavy footed all the time. And like now, like, my training priorities have changed. And like I really, like we talked about before, like, oh man, like I'm like super stoked that I'm able to like press the 40 kilo, because I was never able to do that before. But I have no interest in like pressing anything heavier than that.
Right. Yeah.
But I do my training, like we said before, like, again, like those rules that you have are something that have stuck with me, especially the older I get and the more my priorities change and more like oriented towards my family and my well-being into an old man Nelson. I really appreciate your wisdom, my friend.
Thank you. It's not my wisdom. I'm just the middleman. That's all.
Well, you deliver it to my ear. You're like, Nelson, what are you doing, Nelson?
Keep them grounded.
Yes, man.
That's awesome. That's why wrestling too. I taught a kettlebell workshop at Lehigh University, and all of the wrestlers could do back handsprings and cartwheels and
Yeah,
falls and dive rolls, and I'm like, just this warm up. And I know jiu-jitsu is a recreational activity for the majority of the people that take it, but that's one reason why I love judo as well. Kano actually developed judo as a form of physical education in order to meet all of these nice little physical attributes that people need to live a wonderful life. And somewhere we're like, armbar. Well, what about this? No, just arm bars. That's all we're going to talk about. We have taken away the holistic approach to these arts where,
on the previous podcast, we were talking about language learning with Ruan. One of the things he was talking about is sometimes the people teach a second language and like they teach it in a way that they expect you to already be proficient in it. So that's the problem with like the way they teach Gaelic in Ireland. So my thought was that, hey, like, we relate these to grappling. It's like a lot of times we teach jiu-jitsu, but we expect that everyone can get into these shapes and make these complicated movements.
Yes.
Where like, my foot is going one way, my hips going the other way, I'm going like upside down. Like even like a simple armbar from close guard. Like that is one of the first things we teach, and it takes such a long time because you used to get that movement of getting perpendicular to your opponent and getting your your legs over or like high on the shoulder and over the head. It is a lot, like it's not something we're pre-wired to do. And some people that have gymnastics backgrounds and or wrestlers do pick it up faster than the rest of us. But just like you said, I think especially now a lot of jiu-jitsu is going away from the movement warm-ups and more into just specific drilling of specific techniques. I think something beautiful is being lost there.
I agree. Yes.
And I'm not saying because some warm-ups for like some school run warm-ups where we're just doing push-ups, sit-ups, and jumping jacks. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about animal crawls and all your different types of shrimping, like forwards, backwards, sideways, and like break falling.
Yes.
And just getting people to move again. I remember when I was running warm-ups and having people do cartwheels. This grown man doing cartwheels, and then they're just being hesitant, and then telling me, it's like, hey, that's the first time I do a cartwheel since the 5th grade.
Right. Yeah.
Now do both sides.
Got to do both sides.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too. It's like how funny it is. Like, oh, a lot of these people can only do like cartwheels to one side, and it's like if you tell them to go left hand first, like you can see their brain short circuiting in real time.
It's true.
It's also fascinating now that it seems that a lot of what we're talking about, like the crawls and the see-throughs and getting up, and is coming more and more into like mainstream fitness.
It is.
And there's all these certifications that you look at the curriculum. It's like, oh, they're doing a jiu-jitsu warm-up.
They're doing the jiu-jitsu warm-up. Yes, I know.
It's like doing like stand-ups and shin boxes. It's like, oh.
I know. I posted a video the other day and somebody was like, oh, you're doing this. I won't mention the name of the beautiful Australian woman, but I think you guys know it. Oh, you're doing her warm-up. No, this was a warm-up we learned like 20 years ago.
1996 in 707 Chestnut Street.
Right. Yes. Look at you. You got the address. That's awesome. Right. Yeah. This is something that grapplers have done forever. I'm glad these coaches are presenting this material because it is very valuable and wonderful information. But it's old. Look at people use Gymnastica Natural, right? Natural gymnastics. That term natural gymnastics is like 300 years old. I have a really old German textbook and they used the term natural gymnastics over and over again. And the author, female, she was specifically against like all of these highly skilled gymnastics moves and then wanted her curriculum to be based around these natural gymnastics, right? Like you just said, crawling, bridging. I mean, bridging, infants bridge, right? That's one of the first things we do. We bridge. So natural gymnastics. I can send you.
I mean, that is something when Leo was a baby, watching him, like, you put him on his back or you give him tummy time, but watching a little kid like figuring out his first roll.
Yes.
It is one of the most fascinating. If you're into human movement, just watching it. They're like, oh, like me and Hillary like holding their hand, like, we're all excited, like, oh, he's gonna do it. Or I remember he would only roll to his left. And then like he would get stuck rolling to the right for a long time. And it was just like the funniest thing to watch. Especially like, if we're like, we are into the jiu-jitsu, into physical culture. So just being able, I am blessed to have one boy and second one coming, and I'm gonna be able to guide them through all this nonsense. And I am so looking forward to just teaching them like little skills and like basic tumbling, taking to gymnastics eventually. But one of like Leo's favorite games is coming down to the basement with me. We have mats, and like I play with him. And one of his favorite things is that he picks one foot up, I hold his other foot up, and I give him like a little bit of feedback.
Right.
And like he needs to try to balance in one leg as I'm moving the other leg. And it's his favorite thing to do.
Look at that.
And it's hilarious. And he's like, he looks at me, he stands like, he like corrects his spine, like, he gets like a good balance. He does like ready. Like ready. And then like I pick up the foot and start shaking it. And I'm like in the back of my head, I'm like, I can already see it, like, you're gonna wrestle and somebody's gonna like pick your leg up and you're gonna be like, It's like, how many hours I have put into this position?
That's awesome.
It's funny getting him to switch sides too.
He doesn't want to switch sides.
He'll hesitate, but he'll try it. It's funny how he favors.
Well, we all
it goes back and forth. It goes back and forth too with him too, which is interesting. Like I'm still not sure which hand is gonna be his dominant side yet. Like the way he, like, you watch him color or eat or.
My oldest son's like that. Angelo, he does everything goofy foot, which is your right hand. Like actually, when he always throws me off. Like if we square up, he prefers to stand southpaw, but he's he throws baseball right-handed and he writes right-handed. But when he wants to fight, he stands southpaw, and it always throws me off because I think he's got to line up like a right-hander. But then, and his technique is great. But if he does surfboard or he does snowboard, it's all backwards.
Yeah, it is. If you see it a lot with wrestlers crossing over into MMA, because if they're righty, they shoot right leg forward. So they have these dozens of hours into stance, and for a long time, they would make them switch. And then you could also see like people's early MMA careers. You could see them having the right foot back for striking and then switching their stance when they wanted to shoot and like telegraph takedowns. And now there's been a change. You see a lot like wrestlers
Just stay
crossing over into staying there, and now they just have a power jab.
right.
The dominant hand is just throwing the jab,
That's
and
all
it's
they need
hilarious.
to, right? But that's all they
Yeah.
need, so they can get in and get whatever
Yeah,
grappling they want.
yeah.
So I got a question for you two: who's going to win, Jake Paul or Ben Askren?
It's gonna depend on the referee and how dirty the boxing gets. Because if you have Ben Askren, no matter what size glove he has on, you let that guy hang on you for how many rounds? That is not something I think Jake Paul is used to.
You think it'll? I hope they don't separate them. I hope they allow Askren the dirty box.
Yeah.
But he's like sort of like the Diaz brothers, right? Like he'll hit you with a little million. Well, I guess the Diaz brothers have more knockout power than Ben Askren, but it's going to be a lot of hits without a lot of juice, right?
Yeah. I think the technical term is Peter Patter.
Peter Patter. That's the actual boxing term. Peter Patter.
Yeah.
Peter Patter is like the sound you make when you hit it.
Peter Patter. I guess the Diaz brothers have a similar style, but it's a little bit harder, right?
Yeah. I mean, the other thing too is just for the Diaz brothers, it's like their gas tank
is forever.
And then if like in MMA and you're trying to like get a rhythm and trying to get your breathing back, and you have somebody just punch you in the face,
right?
Even if it's not like it's like a 70% shot, but if he keeps landing, like that will mess up your breathing rhythm.
Right. I hope Askren wins. Hillary, who do you have?
No, I'm with you. I think he'll tire him out at least.
I'll take the Olympian over the YouTuber any day.
I know. Either way, it's a win-win for Ben. He said that he's going to make more money in this one fight than he made in his MMA career. How ridiculous is that?
It's fascinating.
It's fascinating. Fighting a YouTuber. God bless YouTube.
Yeah.
That's crazy, the paycheck.
And then I think the other thing too is like also like Askren was one of the best scholastic wrestlers ever. Like he really like his style, like it's like he's one of the first guys to like take like the funk wrestling to like where it is now, because he changed his scholastic wrestling.
Right.
Like you can't see high level matches anymore without some kind of funk thrown in. And the fact that like wrestlers don't have a professional venue where like they can go pro, like they can try to make the Olympics or they can go into MMA.
Right.
It's still sad. I mean, like Jordan Burroughs is the best American wrestler over the last 10 years, just lost Olympic trials. And it's just one of those things like this. He's had like 2 bad days over the last 10 years. He just one of them happened to be during the trials. He just breaks my heart. Right. And like, also like what would have happened if the Olympics were last year like they were supposed to be instead of today? It's kind of silly.
Yeah.
All right, Jason. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nelson. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Hillary.
Where can people find you and your awesome t-shirts and banners?
IronKimono.com or JasonCBrown.tv.
And then is there some training program I hear about coming up soon?
So within depending on when this launches, it should probably be already open. But my co-created coaching community, I'm calling it co-created because I'm not preloading it with a bunch of cookie cutter information. It's going to be completely devoted to helping people co-create their programs. So it's mostly going to be Q&A, some how-to videos, but it's specific.
So it's going to be more about the programming than the exercise selection.
Yeah, it's not going to be so much about. We're going to be talking about it's not going to be so much about the details, the specific details of like joint angles and things like that. It's going to be more about how you can develop a beautiful physical culture and enjoy it forever. Right?
I love it.
So it's not going to be, exercise will definitely be in there, but there are so many other elements that go into living a good physical culture beyond just exercise, right? So there's nature,
Mm,
and then there's practice, and then there's play, which you guys just spoke about so well, right? There's play. The 4 elements that I talk about is it's practice, play, rest, and nature. So those 4 will be the 4.
beautiful.
Yeah. And I think, we have people that are addicted to exercise, but they won't go for a walk in the woods. Right. And those are the things that I think we need to get back to, because those things directly contribute to a beautiful quality of life. Right.
I think separating exercise from movement needs to be done. The same thing is like there's jiu-jitsu guys that will do 2 a days, but will take a walk around the block.
Yeah. Right. I don't understand it,
So
but that's the one thing that I'm going to try to change a little bit.
yeah, awesome. I am looking forward to it, my friend.
I'll let
Thank you
know
for
when
your
it's
time.
ready, sir. Thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Hillary.
Yeah, thank you, Jason.
Ciao.
Thank you for listening, Panda Nation. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Inverted Gear podcast. You can find us at invertedgear.com as well as your favorite podcast app. Don't forget to give us a like, and we'll see you soon.